Somebody wake this one up. So I really don't want to use these if I don't have to, so I'm going to have it out here. So thank you for bearing with me. We're going to look at the 15th chapter of the book of Luke this morning. And how many of you have seen any part of that series, The Chosen?
Oh yeah.
Anybody? Okay, so some of you have, some of you have not. The first season especially, I really liked it. It really stuck to the Gospels. It's about Jesus and his disciples. He chose them. Follow me, etc. The second season, there's a whole lot of poetic license because they're trying to build connections. And it's been a little more difficult for me to sit there and say, but why didn't they just do this? But it's good. But one thing that I'm seeing in the second season, and this is going to tie into what we're going to look at here, at least in the first verse. The actor and the direction he's giving that plays Jesus, I think he does a good job. And when he's ministering to people, he seems to genuinely have a lot of joy in helping these people. And then when these Pharisees try and undermine him by questioning this and that, pure disgust shows in his face. And I've never thought of it before. But when you read the words of Jesus, I mean, he's calling them vipers and their tombs full of dead men's bones and things like this. He was disgusted with them. And one thing that I see, at least in my perception, in watching some of these episodes in the second season, and I've not thought of it before like this, but maybe it'll help you. The religious leaders of the day, when Christ was walking on the earth in his earthly ministry, they had put God in a box. Do you know what I mean by that? This is where God can live. This is the way he is. This is what he does. He does nothing else outside of this. And so when Jesus is on the scene and he's performing miracles on the Sabbath day, and that was rocking their world because they had this concept that even God wouldn't do anything on the Sabbath day. We can't put God in that we can't put boundaries on him, can we? How many of you have experienced God enough in your life that he has surprised you sometimes by doing things, opening doors, saying things, reaching you or family members in ways you didn't expect because he did it in a way you didn't expect? Well, when Jesus showed up, it's in a way they didn't expect, even though the Old Testament plainly says, how he was going to come. Yeah. Yet they expected it different.
Yeah, that's right.
Even in the Old Testament, and I'm about to get into the word here, so it might sound like I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm coming back. In the Old Testament, the Syrian, so he wasn't even an Israelite, he wasn't even Jewish, came to see the prophet about being healed from leprosy. But then he gets upset when the prophet sends the word what to do, because he thought, that's exactly the way the Bible says it, he became angry and he leaves. And when the people with him in his company, because he's a general in the Syrian army, so he has a company of men with him, and they said, in so many words, what's the problem? And he's like, well, I thought he would come out here and say this. I thought this. Well, sometimes we think God is going to do things in a certain way. He does it in a very different way. And we don't recognize that that's God, because we were expecting it differently. And that's exactly what the Pharisees and the scribes, the religious leaders of the day, were expecting. They were looking for the Messiah, the warrior, the warrior king who's coming to deliver Israel from their enemies. They weren't looking for the Lamb of God slain from the foundation of the world to redeem the whole world to himself. They were just looking for the one coming to deliver Israel.
Right. Yeah.
And so they didn't recognize it. And in one episode, Jesus heals the man with the withered hand in the synagogue on the Sabbath day. And the Pharisee there running the synagogue is freaking out. And in the episode of The Chosen, he says, if God would have wanted the man healed on the Sabbath day, he'd have done it himself. And then the character Jesus says, well, funny you should say it like that. Because there he is, God manifest in the flesh.
Right.
And I had to laugh at that. It was intended to be humor in the show, and I thought, yeah, exactly. But they couldn't see him because he came in a way they didn't expect. So don't let the Lord show up in your life in a way you didn't expect and not recognize that that's him. So verse 1 of chapter 15 of Luke. The tax collectors and the sinners, I'm reading from the New King James, excuse me, drew near to him to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. To them, that's this unthinkable. And so he says these parables to him. There are 3 in this chapter. And they follow a sequence. And there's a real point here. The first one is the man who has 100 sheep. And one of them, no fault of its own, is now found not with the flock. It's lost. And he says, what man of you having 100 sheep, if you lose one of them, does not leave the 99 and go after the one that was lost? And when he's found it, he rejoices. He comes home. He calls his friends together and says, I found my lost sheep. And he's so excited. And then he says, verse 7, I say to you that likewise there will be more joy in heaven. Listen to this closely. Over one sinner who repents than over 99 just persons who need no repentance. That's God's viewpoint of the one who, by no fault of their own, found themselves lost, and yet now they're found. It's joyous. And joy in heaven over it. So that sheep wasn't run out of the flock. It wasn't kicked out of the flock. It wasn't angry at the shepherd or the other sheep and left in the tiff. It was just nibbling out there in the pasture and wandering around looking at this. Next thing you know, it's like, where's everybody? And at that point, it found itself so far removed from its shepherd and the flock that it is completely lost. The shepherd can't even see it. He has to leave the other sheep and go search for it. And that is a picture of what the Lord does for us. When it's no fault of our own, we just kind of find ourselves caught up in life. And then we suddenly realize one day we're so far removed. He comes looking for you. Mm-hmm. Now in the next parable, same chapter, verse 8, this is a very interesting passage. In this very verse, I think the King James uses the word drachma. The New King James translates it coins. It says, or what woman having 10 silver coins or 10 drachma, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? Well, what significance is that? There's a reason. And I didn't know this until last night when I was studying for today. The drachma is not another name for a coin. It was something that married women often wore around their necks And it was specifically had 10 silver coins. And it was married women that wore it. Now, it's not necessarily like today's wedding ring that someone wears, but it was very much connected to the fact that they were married and had something to do with their marriage. Now, she's lost one of those, but this thing has a lot of value to you. How many ladies, you lose your wedding ring, are you tearing that house up looking for it? This is the example Jesus is using. Does that make more sense to you? So sometimes understanding the context of the day is nice to know. That is the picture you need to be thinking of. You lost your wedding ring. Now you're seriously looking for it because it means so much more than just a ring. And when she finds it, no wonder she calls to her friends, "Hey, I found it, I found it." It's exciting. It's the relief. Oh, I found it. Some years ago, now my wedding ring, my body changes size all through the year, and it's not because I'm gaining weight and losing weight all the time. My hands swell and then they shrink, and they swell and they shrink. So when I was first married, wore my ring all the time. One day it was hurting so bad, my finger was just throbbing, and it looked like the circulation was cut off. I'm like, what? I couldn't get it off. I was just wanting some relief, and it wouldn't happen. So a couple of days went by, and one day I'm standing, and it just fell off and banged on the floor. I thought, what? A couple of days ago it was aching. Well, I thought, well, I need to get it sized, because something's changed since we had my finger size before my wedding and got the ring. Nope, that won't work either, because it won't fit again in a few months. And so I wear it occasionally, but I don't wear it every day. But I lost it once. I thought the Cox cable man stole it. My apologies to any of you that work for Cox that are watching today. But my wife will remember, we had just moved back here from when we lived in Texas. We were staying at my parents' house, and my dad had Cox there doing some things, running some new lines to where his office was in another part of the house. And I had come in from mowing his grass. It was all hot. I was taking a shower. I took off my ring and put it on the shelf in the bathroom. And after I got out of the shower, I forgot to put it on. And then the Cox guy was actually in the bathroom there running lines down. If you remember the house they used to live in, it was just from there down to, it was a vantage point from the outside box through the wall in there and then down to the next room. And then I remembered the ring, and I was like, oh, I went in there looking for it and it wasn't there. And the Cox guy had left. I'm like, didn't think about it. So we looked all over the house. Nowhere. You remember that? Nowhere. That Cox guy stole my ring. I'm positive he stole my ring. My wife's like, how can you know that? It was there. It was there. 2 years, 3 years went by.
Oh, my.
After church, I was putting my guitar amp in the back of the truck, and sunlight flashed on something. Looked in the back of the amp, there was my ring. In the back of my guitar amp. I couldn't believe it, but I was so happy I found it. And then my wife said something to the effect, don't you feel bad? You've been blaming that guy from Cox all these years. And I'm like, well, I mean, he seemed like the only logical thing, but yeah, I did feel a little bit bad about that. So, but it was a joyous, I was happy.
Yeah.
This is what that woman in this example, but this was a loss of a coin. It was an accident. Some might say negligence, but she searched for it diligently. This is a coin, and I know it's an inanimate object, so I'm not suggesting it had a mind of its own and said, oh yeah, I'm getting off of this necklace. But she lost it, and when she realized it wasn't there, she went searching. She even lights a candle, it says, and she's searching the house. So it's at night. She's getting the lamp on. Where is it? Where she swept, it says. So she's cleaning up. Where could it be? She found it. And that's what the Lord does. When we, by either an accident, negligence, or someone else's actions, wander off. And sometimes people will leave the church because somebody offended them. That's so sad to me. Jesus was offended greatly by these Pharisees, but he never quit going to the synagogue. It wasn't God that was offending, it was people. How many of you know people will let you down?
No, sure.
That's a fact. People you love sometimes will let you down. Family will sometimes let you down. I know people who haven't talked to their siblings for decades because they're angry about something. I bet they probably don't remember what now.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal at one time. Don't we do that? Why do we do that? But we do. But due to things, but God still will go looking for you. Now the next and the third and final parable in this chapter, it's probably one of the most referred to parables probably from the Bible. It's about the prodigal son. The boy who left home says to his dad was wealthy. He's got 2 boys and he's got a lot of land and he's got servants and he's got some wealth. And this one kid says, Dad, I don't want to wait till you die to get my inheritance. I'd like it now. Well, that's pretty brash. But his dad complies, says, sure, you know what, that's fine. He divides up his wealth. There it is, verse 12. The last phrase of verse 12. So he divided to them his livelihood. Notice it says them. That's because he has 2 sons. So he went ahead and split it up between them both. And then not many days after, verse 13, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with his, New King James says, prodigal living. He wasted it. He blew it. Later in this chapter, his older brother says to his dad, he says he wasted it on harlots. Well, we know he's just throwing his money away, living a riotous, sinful life. And he goes completely broke in this far country. And he attaches himself, the Bible says, to a citizen of that land. And he starts working for this other person. And the man hires him to feed his pigs.
Yeah.
Now, you have to think of the context of this. Jesus is Jewish. That's a surprise to a lot of people, but he's Jewish. He's talking to a whole moonful of Jews who are living according to the law. And these Pharisees are there. Remember, they got disgusted because he's got tax collectors and sinners there eating with him as well. So he's got this whole company of people, and some of them are religious, pious individuals, think they're better than everybody else. And then there's a bunch of others who are just glad to be there with this guy named Jesus, who is amazing and loves them so much. They don't eat pork. It's forbidden in the law of Moses. So they don't even keep pigs. So to hear about this Jewish young man who is brash enough to tell his dad, I want my inheritance now, not after you die. And then he leaves and goes to a far country and wastes it. He's dead broke. And now he's working for some other guy, which would mean a Gentile, which would be like something they would have a problem with. And he's feeding pigs. For them, that's the bottom. And then it gets worse because he's now so hungry. He's looking at what he's feeding the pigs, and he's envious of what they're eating. Now that is the last part of the bottom. And he says to himself, my dad's servants have a better life than this.
Yeah.
That word servant means slave. The slaves that work for his dad have a better life than this. He's reached the bottom. But in no time did his father come looking for him. He had to come to himself and come home. But the beautiful part is coming up. Verse 20. And he arose and came to his father. And when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Hold on a minute. The sheep just kind of gets caught up in life, finds itself way out here. That happens sometimes to us, doesn't it? But the Lord comes looking for you. The coin that got lost either due to negligence or something. He swept the house. He's looking for you. He finds it. But the one who says, yeah, I'm going to go live my life the way I want to, he doesn't go after him. But when you start coming home, he runs to you.
Amen.
Somebody needs to hear that this morning. Sometimes we make foolish decisions and we decide to go do things our own way, or we know something isn't right and we violate that and we just do it because we're going to live our own life. God doesn't come after you and you do that. You have to decide to come home. But when you do, he comes running. That is special. See, he wanted to get that boy the whole time. But he chose that life. And he had to say to himself, no, this is not good. I need to go home to my dad. I need to return home to my father. Even the servants have it better than I've got it here. And I'm just going to tell him, I'm not even worthy to be his son. Just let me be a servant. Translation in today's language, let me be a slave and work in your farm as a slave. Because I'm not worthy to be considered your son. But is that what his father in this parable settles for? No. He says, bring the best robe. Bring me a robe. Get some sandals for his feet. Because he sees he's so poor. He has no shoes. He's totally in rags. Sin has wrecked his life. Give me a ring. Put a ring on his finger. What does that ring signify? That this is my son. He's not going to make him a servant. He's always been his son. We've always been his child. We just might have wandered off and didn't appreciate it for what it was. This parable he tells in response to the Pharisees saying he eats with these sinners. What is he saying? Some of these people wandered off on their own by choice. Some of them were just caught up in life and then found themselves in a different state. Some of them maybe from you guys. He's talking to the Pharisees. You might have kicked them out. Maybe didn't like what they were doing. They weren't doing things just the way you thought they should, and they didn't live up to your expectations. Well, he's going after them. The Lord's love for us never wanes. He loved this young man, but he didn't go get him because he chose to leave. He waited till he was ready to come home. Think of the rich young ruler is how he's referred to. We don't know his name. The other people, most of the other people that Jesus asked to follow him, we have their names, most of them. There's one that's only listed as the rich young ruler. And because he had much wealth, and Jesus said, well, go sell what you have, give it to the poor and follow me. He went away sorrowful because he didn't want to do that. And the Bible says Jesus loved him, but let him go. Whoa. He wasn't going to force him, nor will he force us. But his love for us is immense. Now, we don't know any more about that rich young ruler. My hope, literally, I've thought of this over the years many times. I hope that he was one of the 3,000 on the day of Pentecost that got baptized. I hope. Or maybe one of the 5,000 that got converted after the man at the gate beautiful, the lame man who was healed. And 5,000 were added to the church in one day there in Jerusalem. I hope he was one of those. But we don't know. And it's kind of silly to speculate, so I'm not going to. But, wow. The Lord, in this example, the Father is God. The Son, fill in the blank, us. There's two. There's one who didn't leave. That's the older brother. And by the way, he had a bad attitude when the younger brother came home. He had a rotten attitude. He's like, you never threw a party for me like this. You never even gave me. No, notice this. And if you're not familiar with the story, you should read it in Luke chapter 15. But so after the dad says, bring me a robe, get some sandals, give him that ring on his finger. After he does all that, he says, bring the fatted calf up here and kill it, and we're going to have a feast. Well, later, when the older brother comes and says, hey, what's going on? And one of the servants says, oh, your brother he's come home. And he's like, what? And then he says to the dad, you didn't even let me have a goat to have a party with my friends. So, fatted calf, that's the one to save for the special occasion. You didn't even give me a goat, he says. Now, there's a difference, folks, between a goat and a fatted calf. Anybody had goat? I have.
Yeah.
You cook that for a long time. Lots of barbecue sauce, because they taste pretty strong. Okay. Weeds don't taste like corn. and alfalfa and good grass. And it's funny, I mentioned this on the way here. I wasn't trying to tie this together, but I am now. I was watching a special. Some people in Wyoming are having some great success taking care of these weeds that have been taking over the state. And who knew that was happening, right? But they use goats. And early in the spring, when the weeds are starting to flower, goats will not eat grass unless there's nothing left. They don't like grass. They don't like the good stuff that cows will like. They like weeds. Funny how God has a cleanup crew for everything, right? It's true. Think about it. They will devour those weeds. And there's nothing left, then they'll eat the grass. So they eat the weeds before they flower and seed. And those weeds are, what's the word for a plant you have to plant every single year? Is that an annual? A perennial comes back every year, right? Am I right? Whatever it is. Weeds you have to plant every year. So if they eat them up before the seeds get dispersed, well, the weeds will not come back the next year. And so they're cleaning up Wyoming and parts of the West with herds of goats. But they taste different because they eat different. The boy says, you didn't even give me a goat, much less the fatted calf. And what's his father's reply? You're with me all the time. You can have any of this anytime you want. It's all yours. So he was missing out on having a good time in the party, and he could have the whole time, is what he found out. He didn't have to wait till his dad said, let's celebrate. So that's a lesson for the older brother, for those who didn't wander off. But God is excited and is joyful when we come home. Benny Hester wrote a song about this parable back in the early 80s, I think. And it was a nice song to listen to. And then somewhere around in the early 2000s, Phillips, Craig, and Dean redid the song. And that's the one that just kind of took off and became a massive hit in Christian music. It's called When God Ran. It's a beautiful song of this whole story and how it's the only place in the Bible where you see, and this is Jesus giving this illustration, how the Lord looks at the lost. When you start coming home, he's running to you. That's so special to me. That's so special to me. I'll tell this, and then we'll pray and we'll close. My battery's still going. It must be the Lord. I haven't had to plug the thing in. I'm like, whoo! I'm thankful. Anyway, so when I was a young man, I was not always very smart. Very wise, I'll say. There's common sense, there's academic knowledge and things like that. Okay, the academics part I could do. I was lazy. I did not study. Things came easy for me. So I just thought, kind of like my middle child, C's get degrees is what she says. Which I told her when my youngest daughter, which was up here a few minutes ago, was younger, I told my oldest daughter, I said, stop saying that around her. I don't want her to hear these things. Because she's getting good grades and she's excelling and this is great. I don't want her to hear this propaganda from you, And she would just grin and look at me because she knew. But she thought a lot like I did. And I was very much filled with regret when I found out she was thinking that way. And I thought, man, that must be genetic because I totally never talked about this. Well, not only that, but I made some rotten decisions in who I had for friends. And I've preached many times on who the influences are in your life. They really influence your life. Your choices in life are largely dependent upon who you're hanging out with. And I didn't always have the best choices in life. I didn't start making good choices there until I was probably 19. So, yeah, not so good. Ended up doing some rotten things I'm very much not proud of. And some things my children will never know. As long as I live, I will not tell them some things. I don't want that, no. But suffice it to say, I was probably I might have been 19. I think it was just before I turned 19. So I was definitely not living for God and not good. My parents, because I was old enough to stay home by myself and I worked a job, it was in the summer, it was between high school and college. My parents and my sister went on a trip somewhere and I stayed home as I was working. So I was home by myself and those of you who know me, I play guitar, I play the drums. So I was always, in my spare time, stereo was loud. I'm sure the neighbors were happy about that. The sound music was just, the whole house would do, it was loud. But I was by myself, so I didn't care. And years before, I had taken a trip with Pastor Howie, who is my cousin, to one of our cousins' weddings in the state of Montana. And we drove there in his El Camino. You had just got your blue El Camino. And you had got a couple of new cassettes. One of them was the Imperials, One More Song for You is the album, and the other one was the Archers. I forget Stand Up or something like that. You had other Christian tapes. This is before CDs. And many of them, second chapter backs, all kinds of stuff. Well, I was pretty much a rockhead. And I thought to myself, when I knew I was going to be going to Montana with Howie, I said to myself, man, I'm going to be driving the whole way and listening to nothing but Christian music. That's a 15 or 16-year-old kid for you, right? Wow, did that help change my life? There were no other tapes in the car. And has anybody driven through Wyoming?
Boring.
There's almost no radio stations. So at night, when it started getting dark, we traded off driving, and this man fell completely asleep. And I had nothing to listen to but Christian music. And so I just left the one tape in, the Imperials, One More Song for You, and just let that thing play, because there was a couple songs that were pretty peppy, and I'm a musician, so I appreciated the music part of it. Well, now fast forward back to that time I'm alone in my house. And I'm looking, I had a box with tapes, and I'm looking through some to put another one in the stereo to try and play along with. And there's this Imperials tape. Put it in. Listen to a couple of songs. There's one called Higher Power. It was good. I could play the guitar to that. That was fun. And I just let the tape play. And a particular song came on, and there's nothing special so much about the song. But all of a sudden, I'm in the house. Central air conditioning is on. All the windows are closed. The wind blew around me. Instantaneously, I fell right down, and I'm just weeping. Jesus showed up. And he talked to me. And all I could do was weep. My face in the floor. God in the house. Because as I listened to those songs in my heart, I started wanting to go home. And God ran. He ran. Up until then, he didn't come looking for me, because I had willingly gone a direction. But in those few minutes, just a few minutes, listening to the song, hearing the message, God ran. And he absolutely came into that room. And my life was not the same. Fast forward a few weeks, I don't remember now how many now. It might have been a couple of months, I don't know how many. I woke up a Saturday morning. I was looking at the ceiling in my room. Anybody ever do that? I had this light fixture that was like a map. It was a globe, and it had a compass, north, south, east, west, and that's what I remember. I was looking at that, and I looked at the ceiling, and I said out loud to myself, because I was by myself, I said, Mark, you are on a dead-end street, and you are going nowhere fast. It's time to go home. And that was the end of my riotous living. I was done. It was over. I knew it was a dead end. There was nothing there. I was done sleeping underneath the pine tree in the neighbor's yard down the street because I was so wasted I couldn't make it home. I was done with those crazy days. I was done with the rebellious living and the violence and the stupidity of my youth because I realized I was feeding pigs, so to speak. And I needed to go home. I'm here to tell you, you don't have to take a long journey. It takes just a few moments. In your heart, you start to go home. He shows up. He can't wait for us to, when we decide to wander off, to come to ourselves and decide we need to go home. He's watching for us. That dad was looking at the horizon, waiting, hoping that boy would come back. And when he saw him, he ran. God's love is immense. His patience is long. And we don't always get a second chance. But when you do, grab hold with everything you've got and sell out. Because the life he will give you is way better than anything you could have come up with yourself. Let's stand. If you're here today and you would like to recommit or commit your life to the Lord, I would encourage you to do so, and we'll give you an opportunity if you'd like. If you're here today and you just realize maybe you got busy and you in your mind, or the things in life have just kind of occupied your mind to the point where you just realize, you know what, maybe I'm not with the flock anymore. It's just an accidental thing, just happened. Got busy. He's looking for you. He wants to bring you back into the fold. It's not always your fault.